Everyone, and welcome to today's, well, you've probably been to a couple sessions already. This afternoon session, Instant CSAT, Measuring and Monitoring Case Resolution Efficiency. I am just your producer for today. Today's session is going to be led by Brian Krasinski. Brian, I'm going to bring you onto the screen. Thank you so much for being here, and I think I can let you take it away.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I'm Brian Krasinski. I'm a Salesforce Solution Architect at the University of Florida within Central IT. We have on our team, we have about 7 people, a group of 7 running our enterprise org. And we've been doing that for about 6 years now. So form assembly is a big part of the solutions that we offer. We're doing a lot with their forms. And the one you'll see today is actually not behind single sign-on, but we're doing a fair amount with form assembly with their forms behind single sign-on for us as well, which has really added some helpful capabilities. And so just a kind of level set for today, we're here to talk about customer satisfaction survey. So we have really come up with a solution we think that is a little less invasive than spamming, if you will, of sending an email asking for a survey. So what we're going to go over today really is what that looks like, and we'll get into the weeds a little bit so you can understand how we're doing it and how hopefully you can replicate this. And the nice thing about the solution is it's very scalable. Once we've built it out for one group, it is really simple for us to scale to any group and onboard them honestly in maybe a 30-minute meeting. So we're going to talk about the email signature survey. There's really 2 forms that make up this survey, and we'll go over those. And then we'll talk about really writing to Salesforce records. What we do is this is based off of a case. So we do have a survey response object in Salesforce. And then with that, there's obviously some dashboard and reporting capabilities that groups have to work with. So like I said, our goal really, we started out, we got some requests from groups to do a customer satisfaction survey. And we started out just like you would imagine, where we had a case, it closed, and we sent a survey out. And we did that with a couple of groups, and we started to realize, we have 1,100 users here in our enterprise org, and we're not only serving students and applicants, we're actually serving faculty and staff as our customers for some groups. So, think Office of Research, the CFO's office. So some of these groups, their customers are faculty and staff, and often they may contact that unit 10, 15, 20 times a week. So it's not that sporadic contact that you would get from maybe some other populations, to where an email after a case close makes sense. So we started to notice in the couple of groups that we did our initial survey with that certain staff members were getting 15 emails a week for surveys. And then we started working towards how do we throttle that back. Do we send do we say, let's find anyone who had a case this week and send them a survey, but then all of a sudden it's not tied to a specific interaction. And so there's a lot of just kind of gray area that we were running into. And we wanted to build a solution that was scalable to any group that wouldn't have some of these drawbacks that we found with the first one. So what we came up with was really putting in a HTML signature in our case responses. So what you see here on the screen is just a response in an email to a case. And in my user signature, what we have is just some HTML with 5 unique links. So those 5 links that you see there are actually all tied to a form assembly form. And so when I click very satisfied, that's actually going to a Salesforce form assembly form, auto-submitting and creating the survey response record in Salesforce tied to the case. We know that not everyone loves a long survey, so the first part of 2 here for us is really to record that one click, right? So if no one does anything else, we have a 1 through 5 rating tied to that case, and we're also pre-filling some data, which I'll show you here on the next screen. So this is the actual HTML here. So you can see we're pre-filling a couple fields. So we pre-fill case ID and user ID. So, and we pass that into a pre-fill connector. And so we're able to collect some data on who the Salesforce user is, that person, Salesforce user signature that the customer clicked on. And then obviously we're passing in the case ID as well. So we can start to just add more information, right? We have a group that's looking at these survey results, right? And they want to see it by, department or college, right? To say like, hey, we have 10 cases and their surveys, who owns that case? Is it the College of Medicine? Is it enrollment management? So they want to start seeing results based on that type of data as well. So there is a little caveat here, right? There's a limit to characters in your Salesforce signature. So it was a minor thing that we ran into. We did a lot of work on making it efficient in terms of, the smallest amount of HTML that we could come up with character-wise. You can see I have a very simple survey. We do have some folks who like to have an HTML signature in there as well, but we haven't run into too many problems. We can usually kind of work with that person to simplify their signature a little bit. So it's a consideration, but as you'll see, we have a pretty wide adoption with this functionality now, and it hasn't been a limitation or an issue that we've come up against. So the one click. So these are all hidden fields, as you can see in the top right. So when I click on that 1 through 5, I click very satisfied. These are all values that we're using to populate hidden fields on the form via the pre-fill connector. So we basically take that case ID and the user ID, and that's how we populate all of these fields. And we'll write some of them. We've learned some stuff as we're doing this, because this form is just auto-submitted and it redirects to the longer form that you'll see next. But I think this could vary what fields you're interested in, but by us pre-filling the case and the user, that gives us access to any fields that we want. And since you're doing that within a case email, that's the data that you can get and pre-fill. And again, just to add to this, right, this is going to auto submit. So we have a little bit of code that you can do and put into your form to basically, once it's hit, the pre-fill connector runs and then it auto submits. So from the user experience standpoint, and we're going to run a video a little bit here at the end, from a user experience standpoint, they don't really notice anything. They're just automatically sent to the longer form. But it enables us to collect all this data, and then also, if someone doesn't want to fill out the longer form, that's fine. We have that 1 through 5 rating, and we at least have something if someone doesn't want to fill out the longer survey. All right, so the full survey. This was a little work. Our goal on our team was to come up with a survey that would be 95% the same for everyone across campus. And as I'm saying that out loud, you can probably imagine that might be difficult to navigate. What we did to pull it off really was we worked with our Office of Research, who obviously has some good skills and background in that, and also the CFO's office. So we collaborated with those two big units to really come up with what the standard survey has been, or what you see on the screen here. And we haven't had really any pushback. We've actually found that groups, as we've expanded this and offered it, they were kind of happy to have a standard that was out there for a survey, because as you can imagine, a lot of groups like to come up with lots of different questions, and everyone's survey is different, but that's not going to be helpful when you're looking across, especially in Salesforce, if you're looking across, say, 30 groups that are using this, right? We want to have some similarities so we can actually compare the data. And maybe we'll make an update to this form eventually. Maybe someone will come with some good points and say we need to change, some wording here or there. But for the most part, the biggest disagreement we had on this was, do you start with very dissatisfied or very satisfied? That was our big debate. Which way do you go? Do you go 1 through 5 or 5 through 1? So that's that was the worst problem we had. It wasn't too bad of a disagreement coming up with a single survey. So this survey here, right, you can see at the top, we actually do pre-fill. This is the screenshot doesn't have it there, but we'll pass them along once they have the one-click survey, and then they can decide if they want to fill this out or not. Completely up to them. If they don't fill it out and close it down, we still have that one click. And we do have a little variation, I should add. The CFO's office, for us in particular, they wanted one additional free text question, and we added that. And what we're doing, I don't think I have a screenshot of it. We have really just a radio button field, and basically in that we're determining which office and populating that. So we're able to tell who owns that case and which office it is. So it's a little bit of a dynamic hidden field that says, hey, if this question is related to any of the CFO office departments, just dynamically populate the one extra free text question. So we offer up a little flexibility. We certainly could go down a rabbit hole and start to customize stuff a lot for a bunch of groups, but we've allowed a little bit of flexibility here and there for groups when they want, say, one extra question or something along those lines. But for the most part, the matrix you see, that's what everyone is using, no matter what group they are. And survey response. So obviously these are writing to Salesforce records. Survey response is a master detail relationship with case. And this is a full survey that you're seeing here. But if someone only clicked the one click and did nothing else, you would have the 5 rating in the first field there, the one click survey score. So you would have a 5 there, you'd have the survey response name and nothing else. So this record is really identifying and showing someone's done the one click and then they've filled out the entire survey. And you can see where we chose the 1 through 5 as our rating. There's different thoughts on what you should and shouldn't do. You'll see some interesting fields there, like conflicting ratings. We have seen someone, clicks very satisfied, and then they come here and they put, all 1s and they're not happy. We don't see it too often. I'd say it's maybe 3 to 5% of our surveys are conflicting, but it's a formula field where we basically just have written a formula to say, all right, if there are conflicting ratings in terms of there's a 1 click survey, it's a 1, and then everything is a 5 for the longer survey. Let's just be able to identify those. We still include them. We give groups a filter in the dashboard to filter it out if they want. But it's been helpful for them to be able to filter those in and out. And as you can see, the free text is there as well for someone to go through. We do have some groups as well who are looking to, some of the groups that are using it don't have a lot of volume or as much volume, and they actually asked us to identify and segment just the full surveys that have free text. And so we have a component in our dashboard that allows them to just look at those surveys, and they go through them, read them, and then potentially address things based on what's in that survey. All right, so that's start to finish. What we're gonna do next is jump to a video. It's gonna be a couple of minutes. So what that's gonna do is really just take you through these last 6 slides that I went through, and it's gonna just take you through the entire process. I'll add a little bit more context as we go through, but it'll be sort of start to finish. It'll start with a Salesforce user in a case, and then really kind of switch over to someone being a customer who is filling out that survey. All right, there we go. We're using Alberta Alligator here in our demo. You can see that's me sending a response from a case out. And you could, in theory, get a little fancier with the HTML as well. If you're looking at that signature and saying to yourself, it's a little bland. Again, we were really trying to minimize the character limit due to that limitation with Salesforce. And hopefully you didn't even notice that one-click auto submit because you're already here on the longer survey. And so before the longer survey gets filled out, just showing you here that the record's created, it's blank, it has a 5 on it, tied to the case. I want to say we're at about 60% of people will fill out the longer survey, maybe closer to 70% or something. And then here, since I filled out the longer survey, you'll see the additional field. So we're just doing an update in the connector here. It's the create on the first form, and then we're just doing a lookup and an update when the longer survey is submitted. Tied to the case, tied to me. Go on to our next slide here. So I will mention we have found on occasion, I want to say there's about maybe 10% every week of these surveys. Many of you probably know that, there's a lot of spam and, people sending links and emails that they want you to click with viruses and everything else. So there are platforms that universities and companies use to basically just click on links to test them out and whatnot. So we have found there's a little bit of that. Sometimes we'll pull some data and we'll see that there was a survey where, a one-click survey was submitted 5 times, and there's one for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we just kind of go and have a job that goes and cleans those up. It's been a minor thing for us. It takes maybe 3 minutes a week to clean up. So it's something we're willing to deal with. We've tried to see if there's any way around it, but we really haven't found one. So it's just a little bit of a minor hiccup, but otherwise we found the data to be quite clean. There's always some people that submit 2 surveys, and you can kind of figure it out by the time and the IP address, and there's some form assembly fields, system fields that you can pass along back. So we've been passing some of those just to kind of evaluate the data to make sure and keep the integrity of the survey and the responses accurate, because there are groups that are using this for, evaluating their staff, right? Where we're getting these surveys in, it's tied, they're tied to Salesforce users. And so this is part of something aside from the bigger picture of just a customer satisfaction score, but these being able to be tied to a user signature. We're finding groups here at UF who are using it in performance evaluations, and just to see if you have someone that's dipping below a certain percent, taking that data and addressing it with them, or looking at those cases with them when low scores are coming in. So this is the nice part of this, right? We're able to get instant data. So once it's the records are created, the survey response record is created, it's tied to the case. However a group wants, we have groups doing it different ways. Some groups open up this data to all their users. Some are just keeping it to a smaller group of people. And then they're taking that data, and in weekly or monthly staff meetings, they're talking about it. They're showing, how it's trending month over month, year over year. And so it's really, we're playing the role of, we can provide this data in many different ways. And then the unit on campus, they're really getting to decide how they want to use it. Some groups, I think a manager just looks at it on a high level and tracks it a little bit. And then other groups, every user has access to it, and they're able to look at that data. They're able to click on that data and see how, for the week, how many surveys were submitted on on behalf of them or for them. So we've had good adoption, but we really just present the options and what's capable to the group and let them decide. And we do a note here is we have one dynamic dashboard. So if you're familiar with Salesforce dashboards, you can have a dynamic dashboard that basically means the logged in user who's looking at it, they're viewing it based on their security levels. So that's been helpful for us to just have one dashboard for all of the units that are using it, and it's all security based, right? These are, the survey response is master detail to case. Cases are owned by queues, so the Salesforce user is gonna come into this dashboard and they're gonna see survey response records that are tied to cases that the queue that they're in. So it's been nice to not have to build out a lot of extra things. And I mentioned before too, the filters. So there's a conflicting rating. We've had requests for full surveys. So some groups just want to see full surveys. They're a little skeptical on one click. So they only want to see the data based on people who've submitted a full survey. So that's another filter we have on there. And then of course, some date ranges, and then record type or queues, kind of the same thing for us. So groups will, some people have access across, we have a couple people in the CFO's office that see across 8 or 9 different units. So at times they'll just want to see the customer satisfaction for one of those 8 and not all of the ones that they have access to. And so unit here. So I've blanked out some stuff, as you can see, you know, just to exclude some of the units here on campus. I did include, it's all the units there, and you see in the middle one. Those are us saying how many surveys had free text comments. But then, you know, that's a customer satisfaction score by unit, and then volumes, right? So that 1.4, you can probably connect the dots and realize that's benefits, because benefits has 493 free text surveys. So benefits is that 1.4 there at the top. So we can see the volume of how many survey responses have been submitted, and then a customer satisfaction score percent by unit. And one of the things we tell groups is don't necessarily compare yourself to other groups. It's a little difficult to find a standard percent in higher education. What we kind of stress to groups is, you know, get a year in, find out what your benchmark is, or, you know, if you want to do it monthly, that's fine as well. And compare yourself, right? If your customer satisfaction score is 60 that first year, that sounds terrible, but if it's 75 the next year, that's great progress. So really don't always compare yourself across units, because there's so many differences between groups. Like when you call certain groups, it's just you're calling because most of the people calling are unhappy, right? It's an issue with retirement or your paycheck, and that group in HR, they may not be able to do much except send you off to the state to help you out with your retirement. But most people are not happy with that type of answer. So we really stress, we have had some groups who are hesitant to implement this because they're worried about bad results. What we do really is say, hey, our average here at UF is over 80%. Don't worry about, comparing the bursar to payroll services. Get in there, get your first year in, get your baseline, and then compare yourself to comparing yourself year over year to how you're improving or not. And then this is the user part, right? So usernames blanked out here as well, but this is really showing the user score. The first one is the full survey. Again, so there's a list of names there of people and their average customer satisfaction score. You can see there's a lot of people with an average of 100% customer satisfaction score, and then one person who has a lot more surveys than everyone else there on that first line. Not sure who that is. Maybe I should probably reach out to them. I think it's a high score as well if you're looking at some of that data. So like I said, groups are starting to use this to evaluate their staff and understand why someone's getting a lower score. And sometimes it's you're not going to keep everyone happy, but with the volume that we're getting, and you saw that benefits had 1,400 once you get to scale and you have so many, that's only going to improve the accuracy of what your real customer satisfaction score is. So I think we've had groups realize that this is it's not always black and white, but once they get a good amount of volume in, and year over year, and look at the data, it's going to be really valuable to them.
Very cool, Brian. Very cool. As we move into questions, I'll just highlight for our audience, we do have our Q&A module. I'm going to start us off, though. Brian, it seems like your office is the one that is, keeping an eye on this data, maybe, like building the dashboards and then also monitoring the dashboards. But where was the impetus for this project? Did it come from? Did it come from the CFO's office, or was this something where you had different departments trying to track something similar, and you kind of like brought together those efforts into a CSAT score? How did that project begin?
There's always been talk of KPIs and measurables, and so we kept hearing more about it. I think in current environments, it's important to be efficient and also just really show the value. Not just Salesforce, for us, it's showing the value of Salesforce to our users, but yeah, we just kept hearing KPIs and, what's the value add? And honestly, we went out and we looked at the common KPIs that are out there, and customer satisfaction. There's a couple others that we monitor, but this was really the most reasonable one for us to build something out with, without a customer asking for the project. So we kind of got ahead of it, honestly, here at UF. And then we found the groups that we know, measures KPIs in other areas, and then really just offered up and said, hey, we have this functionality that'll help you measure your customer service. And we've had a good response. I think we're at 25 units now using it. So it wasn't a big top-down project. It was more kind of grassroots, and us anticipating the need for it.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, I know a lot of like data projects, especially in higher ed, when you have sometimes whole tech stacks that are decentralized between departments, can be really difficult to find that momentum. So a grassroots effort, it's interesting to see that, but it works. Chantel wants to note that while they don't have a question, they wanted to say go Gators. Hopefully, your weekend looks great from a basketball perspective. So go Gators. A question for you. The units, the 25 that you have up and running on this. Who's your main point of contact? Does it differ per unit, or is there a data role kind of like embedded? What does that look like for UFL?
Well, one of the reasons why this was really easy for us is because in all of, this is based on having a case in Salesforce. So every unit here were already customers. They were already using Salesforce, email to case, forms, creating cases. So this was an added functionality, which is really something that we've been focusing on, is not necessarily just bringing on new groups and implementing new things, but enhancing functionality for the users we have and enhancing it with products we already have, right? Without spending more money, to be very honest. And so we already had, the point people, the super users in these groups that were using Salesforce already. They're already using cases and other functionalities. So this was really just a matter of, hey, can we update your signatures? And, we have some training material for, how to, look at the survey response object and the dashboards, but it really wasn't much effort because we already had the users in, and this was an enhancement to what they were already using.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. That's one of my favorite stories, both for Form Assembly and for Salesforce, is finding the flexibility, because once you have a consolidated platform for data, that's when you can start doing these, call them umbrella initiatives, where it's like, oh, we have this data in one platform. That means we can report on it. Let's just make this more visible, not just to individual departments, but also at an organization-wide viewpoint. So we can start comparing like, hey, you may not want the departments to judge each other based on each other's metrics, but at the same time, across the org, hey, are we performing well? I think you touched on that too. It's performance monitoring, which is always good, especially in the age of efficiency. I had one more question for you, and I talked my way away from it, which is terrible. Oh, I know what it is. So my wife works in education, but as a high school teacher, and I know from her experience working inside of like just multi-building school administrations that training materials and finding time to train individual departments, individual staff can be difficult. You mentioned training materials. Did you do that all asynchronously, or did you have like an event pre-school year, post-school year, midsummer that you were able to roll this out to those individual units?
For us, we actually, in our team, we build out knowledge articles. So we haven't had the best adoption of Salesforce knowledge articles across units, but for us, we didn't really have a good reason to not try it. And it's actually worked out well, right? Because Salesforce users are logged into Salesforce, are using it every day. So we just have a knowledge article that, kind of details. We actually have two. We have one that details what customer satisfaction is. So we just kind of curated, hey, this is what a customer satisfaction score is. A 4 or 5 is acceptable. This is how the percent is calculated. So just explaining if someone isn't aware what a customer satisfaction score is and why they would use it. We link out to some external articles. And then the other article, knowledge article we have is more specific about how it works in our Salesforce org. But like I said, the setup is really, we mass update the signatures for groups, and then it's kind of their responsibility. They have the HTML code when a new employee comes on, and they can have them add it to their signature. But yeah, we just use a pretty simple knowledge article to explain and show what it is.
Nice. Well, and hey, keeping it inside of Salesforce. I love that. One last question, this from Nancy. How did you send the survey in the emails? Did users select a particular email template that contained it? Or you may have just kind of answered this, did you just give them the signature and allow them to apply it to what template they needed to send?
Yeah, that's kind of the beauty of it in some ways, right? A Salesforce user can go into their setup and they can set their email signature. And so once they set their email signature, any case that they go into, when they reply to send an email, that signature is automatically inserted. So it's a one-time setup. Once it's put in, the HTML is put into the Salesforce user's signature one time, that's it. Every case that you go in and send an email in, that signature, just like Outlook, right? Your Outlook signature is there every time. You don't do it each time. So there's no templates or anything like that. It's just there based on native Salesforce functionality because you have it in your Salesforce user signature.
Fantastic. Thank you, Brian. I know you have some resources to share before we leave, but I wanted to thank you for answering these questions and for your presentation as well.
Yeah, just real quick. I'm part of the Higher Ed Advisory Council. It's a group of, I think we're at 26 different schools right now. People who volunteered their time to be on the council. We offer up some free material and really just sharing what other schools are doing. So one of those is a documentation project. You can go out there and find presentations that anyone on the council dating back a couple of years has done. They'll be bugging me to upload this presentation there so people can find it. We have office hours once a month. It was actually just about 2 hours ago today. So you can potentially catch the next one. And then also, some of you have probably heard about Dreaming events with Salesforce in general. So there is a Higher Ed Dreaming. It's a user-run conference, and we're going to be having that December 10th this year. But if you scan the QR code, that'll take you to a link tree with these links and information on these, plus a couple additional things as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, Brian. Audience, thank you for joining us for today's session. I hope you can use those resources. Brian, thank you for your expertise in this session. It was great. Audience, we do have another session starting in about 10 minutes. So I might see you over there for the accessibility session. Brian, have a good one, and go Gators.
Thanks. Go Gators.